awful lot to report today, so we're going to get right to it. Can we have an approval of our agenda? Thank you, thank you. How about the minutes? Corrections or additions?
Andrew, I like to compliment the minutes because there was a lot of good topics in last month's minutes, so I just want to
But you
say,
should compliment the people that wrote the minutes as opposed to the minutes.
well, thank you for saying it for me, so instead of me saying it quick. Adding that, I'd like to make a motion with the compliment of the minutes. Thank you.
This one works.
Okay. Okay, come on. So, I'm going to combine the chair's report with the board report because a lot of it is the same, and anyone that's seen the news in the last day knows what I'm talking about. Yesterday, the board overwhelmingly approved Alex Partners' recommendations for reorganization of the MTA. They did this without much public input. Well, you could respond to a web address, and people spoke at the public session yesterday, and many of our folks did a fabulous job. Bradley, Sheila, Lisa, Ellen, everybody spoke terrifically yesterday. Chris and Edith were there. It was quite a day. There were about 46 public speakers at the end of the session. It went on. There was a lot of talk of accessibility. We got a major concession yesterday. Money that has been held by the state, approximately $7 billion, will be released to push forward on the next 50 accessible stations. We don't yet have a list of what those 50 stations are. We will try to get that. As it turns out, transit folks and Stantec, the people who are inspecting the stations and rating each one a red, yellow, or green for ease of putting elevators in, still has approximately 100 stations to survey. They're getting close, though. They expect that by the end of this year, they will have inspected every single station that is not currently accessible. Now, when I say they rate them red, yellow, and green, that's how easy it would be to install an elevator. That is not political considerations involved in any of these. That's just ease of installing an elevator. The reorganization plan takes many things away from the agency presidents and puts them in other departments, a department of construction, a department of engineering, a department of, what's the other one? I've got a list of them here. There's so many of them. Yeah, there's that, but that's not as obvious.
Has everybody received the press release that the MTA sent out yesterday?
Yes, I got it.
The press release that the MTA. Yeah. I'm asking if everybody has received a press release that the MTA sent out with the principles and the commitments. We'll send it. We'll send it out again. Sorry.
Yeah, no problem. There's going to be several of these departments. The question was asked by various speakers as well as board members, what will this mean for President Byford's Fast Forward plan? What will this mean for the signal modernization? And one of the representatives from Alex Partners, Foster Finley, answered, projects that were underway will likely stay with the same group that is underseeing their construction now. That wasn't totally definitive, but that was somewhat reassuring. He also said in one of the briefing sessions that because the agency presidents are still responsible for operations, safety, and maintenance, that signal upgrades could be put into the maintenance category and thus would still be retained by President Byford. But it was obvious what was on everybody's mind yesterday. Nobody wants to see President Byford leave. He's assembled a great team. The new Alex partner recommends a chief of accessibility, much of the same things that Alex Elagudin is now doing. Don't know what it means for Alex. I assume he would be conferring with this new person. But the major thing is a chief transformation officer is going to be appointed in the next few months. I am told they are down to 2 finalists on this position, and that is the person that will oversee the change. First, we were told between 1,827 positions would be lost largely through attrition. Now they've backed away from the through attrition and may just be lost by combination of various parts of the MTA. So this is a ever-moving, what's the word? Change, transformation, and it's not really clear. But one thing that was very clear was when the chief financial officer gave the July financial plan yesterday, Bob Ferran, it was clear that the out years have huge deficits in them, and that if you don't pass the Alex Partners transformation proposal, the deficits are totally unmanageable, and that was another piece that moved the board to approve the reorganization plan yesterday. Even with that, 2022 and 2023 still show some serious deficits. The congestion pricing fee that has been applied to the taxi and for-hire service industry will continue to pay for the subway action plan. But there is no new operating money, and that requires lots of savings. There is a cost containment group. We have yet to see what all of those cost containments mean. There's some of those cost containments are tinkering with little things around the edges. For instance, the temperature that the air conditioning is maintained in the subway cars. Changing that a couple of degrees will save this amount of money. Just things like this. It's amazing how deep they're going to try to save money. And, it is true that there was much duplication here. HR, IT, procurement, lots of things that combining would be efficient and make sense. But the agency presidents know their agencies best, and we would hate to lose that institutional knowledge from a faceless third-party organization. We just don't think that's a great idea. We were told that once the Chief Transformation Officer is selected and has made recommendations, the board will have an opportunity to weigh in on some of those. I'm going to actually read you some of the things that were recommended in a minute. We'll have an opportunity, as will the public, but we don't know if that means the public just gets to write another email address and register, or they'll actually get an answer to their question face-to-face in a session at a board meeting. We just don't know that. Many folks asked for that. Ultimately, the board vote was 10 to 1 to 1. 10 in favor, 1 abstention, 1 no. Board member Vanterpool being the no, and board member Jones being the abstention. So everybody else voted in favor of this. Yes. Sticky table here.
These numbers include any revenue increase? It's on. It's on, and you can hear it? Okay, yeah. Is there any provision for revenue increase in these numbers that you're giving us?
The savings that will be gathered or garnered from combining various departments and a huge assault on fare evasion, which is now reaching, it was $215 million a year, which is more than the fare increase brought in. It's now approaching $256 a year. It's kind of the thing to do. Everybody does it from all walks of life. There is a major assault, including the placement of 500 police officers and some bridge and tunnel officers that will be taken off the bridges and put into the system. So regaining some of that lost revenue will be revenue enhancement and, savings from the combining of, but we don't hear any additional monies from the state, if that's what you're referring to. You're talking about what? Oh, from the fair, well.
No, that's flat.
It's pretty flat, and when Bob Foran gave his estimated fare box revenue for 2020, I asked him, does this assume less fare evasion? And he says no, which is sort of discouraging. We've got to get a handle on that. It's rampant. It's especially rampant at non-attended entrances. I see it all the time on the stations that received the Enhanced Station Initiative treatment. Some bright person made the slam gate so low that you can reach over, push in the bar, and open it. And I'm told that those will be retrofitted fairly quickly. As at my station, at the 88th Street end of 86th Street, the spring wasn't even working, so the door was open. Everybody was just waltzing in there. Yes, Ellen.
I spoke briefly with Chief Delatorre because during the parade, there were people coming through the gate. Now, they weren't going in the fare-paying direction. They were, had just opened it. And there were 3 transit people standing there. I went to them and said, can somebody stand by the door to keep this from happening? They said, well, somebody might hurt us, so we're told not to do that. There were 3 police officers. I went over to the 3 police officers, and they said, well, we haven't been told to do that. We're here for parade crowd control. But there's 3 of you, and the gate's right there. And so when I talked to Chief Delatorre, it became clear, one, that the police have to send a memo to Department of Subways to give them permission to put the buzzers on. So it was surprising that, down at Bowling Green, the buzzer wasn't on the door even. And so that's one thing. And then they talked about there's a pilot program to really examine this. And so the slowness of it, because they're thinking about, well, some people don't like the buzzers being turned on, and that they trigger.
The booth agents didn't like it.
Right, and that they trigger the guy that really wants to beat the system. But if we're in a thing where, like all these perfectly well-intentioned people are like, well, if they're going through, I'm going to go through, slowing things down by this pilot is kind of a disservice to the program, I think.
Go ahead.
I would tell you to look that the financial plan is available that was released yesterday, but it's not online. It was put up, it was taken down, it was put up, it was taken down, it was put up, and now it's down. So we'll be reaching out and letting the powers that be know. One of the points that Bob Fran also raised yesterday is that while there's a new dedicated funding stream for capital, there's no dedicated funding stream for operating funds. And that continues to be a problem, and that's where the monies continue to need to be made up. So,
I'll try just once more finally. Is there a revenue enhancement provision over the next 4 years included in these numbers, such as a fare increase?
There is the every other year fare increases in 21 and 23, yes. That there is. And hopefully something about fare evasion. And with the Omni form of payment coming, proof of payment is much easier, so there might likely be less. Since it's so provable the last time you paid with that tap card, it may not be as easy a deal to beat the fare. Yes, Sharon?
I got off the N&R this morning. There were 2 sort of hippies on the ground with 3 policemen around him who had apparently arrested them. I mean, that's what I assumed. And if there were more visible arrests, it would help.
A police presence is very welcome. Commissioner Schwartz has spoken to that numerous times at the board, as have others. We're also going to get cameras in various places, and you may even get screens that show that your face is visible to others, and while there will be the ultimate performances in front of those screens, it will also perhaps dissuade some people from beating the fare. We will see. I have. There's also a big homeless plan now. The Bowery Residence Committee apparently has not been doing the job that everybody hoped they would do, going through the system. both stations and trains and providing aid to people that need it, such to the point that the Inspector General has announced they are looking into Bowery Residents Committee to see why they're getting paid for this from the MTA, why they're not doing the job they were being paid to do. So the IG is actually on this case right now. You would expect in the nice weather there would be less folks underground, but there are plenty of people both on the trains and in the stations, which is not healthy for them given the heat, the rail dust, and the possible attack by a random individual. So we hope they get help. They should not be taking up seats and places in stations and defecating in stations. It's not good for anybody, certainly not good for them. So there is a plan. Yes, Marisol.
So how are they going to address the fact that they can't force them to go into shelter and to get help? How are they addressing that? Because that's the main issue with a lot of the homeless.
They're going to provide them support. They're going to hopefully, it's amazing that we can't make a shelter feel safe for people in this day and age. It's just beyond my comprehension that people don't want to go to a shelter and be in a place where they could get food and
But even
services.
even during the cold weather, the only way that they're going into shelter is when they call a code blue. I don't know if you have to call a code orange or whatever for in this situation, but the only way that they can force them into shelter is through a code blue when it gets too cold. So that's why I wanted to know, what is it that is going to be any different than what's already tried? Because you can't really force them to get the help that they obviously need.
So that's an excellent question, and I think that because there is not an excellent answer, that's the reasoning behind the development of this task force that's being led by Ronnie Haycom and operating with the state Department of Homeless Services, or whatever the equivalent of that is. It's in the press release, which I just sent to everybody. But because there is that is an ongoing issue, and that's probably led to some of the increase. So.
Yep. Chris, then Edith.
Regarding the homeless issues, we also got to remember that some of them may have a disability or a mental, emotional issue.
Absolutely.
That we also need to put on record that the Department of Health and Mental Hygiene does not really take it seriously, because Ronnie and I have spoken this even before the parade started. So there are things that's got to be done, and it's not been done for almost many years. And we have to count them as well, because
lest you think this is just a New York City transit problem.
No.
It came out
No,
yesterday.
come on,
that
Andrew,
It's
it's
a
in the
Long
United
Island
States.
Railroad problem too.
Yes, I know that, because I'm dealing with
Apparently,
an issue.
the Babylon station came up as a place where people are really congregating. So,
and as well as for going into Montauk Branch too, because Hector and I spoke yesterday. There's been issues going all the way out there too.
Edith.
Can you use your
When they talk about having a task force, I think it's really important that we look at the fact that task force tend to be very heavy with administrators, not with line workers or whatever. Having had the ill-gotten pleasure of doing that job many years ago before the wheelchair, it's just good old plain social work, case management. You got to find them, you got to work with them, and you got to gain their trust. But the issue is also a lot of them just don't want to go to the shelter.
No, they don't.
They don't want the rules.
They've expressed that.
I mean, if you're not feeling so great and it's a lousy day outside and you really just want to, stay inside all day, you can't. You get sent off and you're outside all day. This is not, and that's the general shelter. We have nice little shelters like the Armory and 168th Street. We have, but when the Barrier Free Living was temporarily closed, there was nowhere to send people with disabilities. and that's really a problem.
So
is.
that is, I think that what might be different this time, hopefully, is that the governor has made this a top priority.
You
It's
know,
not-
the governor
it's
has
not-
a lot of top
I
priorities.
know, but it's not a top priority necessarily to get people the help that they need, but to reduce the number of homeless in
Right.
the system. So I
It would
think
be
that
nice if it got people the help they need at the same
well,
time.
that's the
the
ideal
goal, yeah.
goal. So, that's immediately starting, and I believe, does that give some timelines? It gives timelines
Yes,
for.
there are timelines in here.
Right, so the timeline for,
Today, the MTA announced the Homeless Plan Task Force with the New York State Office of Temporary and Disability Assistance Commission, New York Police Department, MTA Police Chief, and MTA Chief Safety Officer to assist homeless individuals on MTA property. The plan will link police officers necessary to assist the effort, and so that's immediate. That was on the first page. I was reading.
And they'll
Yeah,
be
that-
there doing
yeah,
it
that's what I
too.
was reading.
the press release points out that a detailed plan will be released by September 3rd from the task force.
And then it then gets put into effect. So obviously it's not happening just yet. So you sent everybody this press release, so everybody can see the components of what was passed yesterday, the timelines, the reporting back.
It's also on the MTA website.
It is on the yes. Yes, I do have lots of other things to report. So I saw a hand up somewhere. No? Okay. So in Transit Committee, there were some service changes that were announced, which I spoke up about, needless to say. 2 of them, or 3 of them, are sort of de facto what is in effect now, and this just codifies it. But because of work going on throughout the system, you may have seen the signage. B service is ending early, and W service is ending early. They have codified that with that now being the official schedule of that. In addition, 1 trip of C trains is being removed from the schedule. I asked, obviously, is this going to be restored when the work is done? Is there a commitment to do that? And President Byford said, I don't know why we wouldn't. Which is not a yes, but I don't know why we wouldn't. I might add that yesterday, because of either it was the Bs ending early or there was a problem. Actually, I don't think they were ending yet, but there was such a delay on the B service, they actually brought a D in to 59th Street on the local track, and everybody was wondering, was it going to go local or express, and they announced that it would be going local. So there was a real problem on the Bs yesterday, but there is that service change that is coming. You may have also read about President Byford's changing of the now unnecessary speed limits that were put in place shortly after the Williamsburg Bridge and Union Square derailments. President Byford has brought much of speeds up. I mean, if you rode the Lex line compared to the West Side IRT, you could see the huge difference between 42nd and 14th on the west side versus Grand Central and 14th on the east side. Now the Lex line is moving faster, and apparently this success story will be brought to the commuter trains as well, and they're looking at where there are unnecessary slow orders on Long Island Railroad and Metro North.
Civil.
Civil.
It's incredible to watch the local. I mean, they are literally one after another. E, C, E, C. I mean, like, I think there were 7 trains while we waited for the A. I'm not complaining.
What stop were you at?
I'm at 34th Street.
Oh, okay.
Where I always get on,
Oh,
which has a gap.
yeah.
Yeah. You know, it never changes in my world. What are they doing about the buses, though? Because we're hearing that they're not going to do the latest cut of buses, at least in the Heights, to compensate for the loss of the elevators?
That, we got a list of,
We got that list.
you got the list. There are some bus additions, but there are more bus reductions than
The
additions.
only additions were 2 in Brooklyn.
Right. That's right.
And, and now the MTA is telling us, oh, they're going to, put more buses on the 4. They're not putting more buses on the 4. They're cutting it again.
Yeah, and the M5 is getting cut.
The M5,
Yeah,
the
yeah,
M4. But the M4, the problem is it's the only game in town.
right.
And if the train, and they're telling people to take the 4 to like 177 to get the train. Well, if you're going to wait 25 minutes for a 4, you may as well just walk down the hills.
If you can.
It's, but there are lots of people who can't, and that's the reality.
It's true, and I will give you a little piece of better news. If you have a chance to be in the Broadway Lafayette BDF&M station, on the platforms they're testing a new type of lighted sign, which I got a look at yesterday, which shows the next trains to come, a strip map of each of those next trains, every stop that those trains will be making, what transfers are available. I found one error on it, but other than that, it's really good, and I think it will be.
Did they include the center platform so you can use it as a U-turn?
It in Broadway Lafayette, it is on the center platform. That's
No,
all.
no, no,
They have
no.
island platforms there.
Is the entire length of that they're showing for other stations? Is there any indication on the other stations if they're a center platform?
No, they just are showing that whether they're accessible or not. That they do show.
Accessibility is greatly enhanced if you can make a U-turn. And many of us live making U-turns. When this elevator is out, I go to Berkeley. I come back.
Oh, that's something else that they mentioned. They're looking to put on this signage status of elevators, where you would go if an elevator was out. I mean, this is quite an effort. If you have a chance and you're in the area, take a look at these signs. They are different back to back. One has one display and one has another. I saw a lot of people trying to touch the thing to see if they could get to a different, because one is giving train status, and they're not touch screen. But if you have a chance, you should check those out. Okay, because we have lots to do today, let us go to old. You have anything to say, or?
Nope. I don't know how long the conversation about our new business is going to take, though.
So we should move. Old business, folks.
August 3rd is around the corner.
Yes,
That's
the new business.
Oh, that's new?
Yes.
Okay. Well, old business is the same business. Fair beating. We had Chief Del Torre here. I don't want to invite him back for a progress report. My other suggestion was to bring in the chief of the MTA police and see what initiatives and ideas they might have, either for the railroads or even for the subways, which they do have jurisdiction over if they wanted to assert it. So sounds like not much progress has been made on the war on fare beating other than some signage. So I think it's a good idea to invite both sides of law enforcement. And also, I wouldn't mind talking to the DAs who've declined to prosecute fare evasion.
Yes.
As part of the reorganization press release that was sent out yesterday, they're beginning on August 1st. They will implement the Fare Evasion and Workers' Safety Task Force, including the NYPD's 200 additional officers, the reassignment of officers and retraining of bridge and tunnel officers to be deployed for fare evasion and worker safety protection. So I think that it was interesting yesterday to hear a number of people expressed concern about the addition of police presence in stations when there are a number of other issues that need to be addressed. I didn't quite get the balance, and I'm not sure why people wouldn't want additional police presence.
Because they feel it's going to cut other services.
Right, it should not. I mean, there should be additional, but we'll see what this task force also begins to implement. I'm not sure they have right. So on December 1st, the Fare Evasion Task Force will release its second progress report. October 1st, the first progress report is due. On December 1st, the second progress report is due. So that would be quite interesting to see what they do, because there have been things that the commuter railroads have been trying, and these efforts that transit is trying, but
President Byford mentioned in London they have these screens that totally stop anybody from coming in, and he says they're expensive, but it's an option.
Problems for people with disabilities.
I
In
think they-
adding, oh, I'm sorry, Stuart.
Go ahead.
No, go ahead, and then I'll.
In adding to the police, does that come out of Transit's operating budget, or is that a city expense? Do we know how that works?
We haven't been told. Stuart?
Just checking up on, from the last meeting, was there any change in the data request for the Atlantic branch figures?
Bradley.
You mean Atlantic Ticket?
Yeah, right.
No, they haven't publicly released all the numbers.
Okay, so no change. Also,
They
a
have
long time-
committed
yeah,
to extending it for a year.
Right. Prior to your starting, we had asked for data on the Lex line and the Q line. Did they ever continue to provide that ridership data?
Oh, ridership numbers?
Yeah. We had asked to see what the shifts would look like. Oh, they were monitoring the impact of the opening of the Second Avenue subway extension. I specifically asked for data. I followed up at other meetings. Time has passed. I'm following up again.
Yes, yes.
And I'm sneaking one more in on my nickel.
Go ahead.
Don't you find it strange that they were interviewing for a position for the transformation officer before the thing was even passed by the board?
They were also interviewing for the position
Right.
of chief operating officer before it was even mentioned.
Right. So,
The CTO is written into the legislation.
okay.
The COO
It-
is, I don't know that it's written in. There are a lot of, this
But you would
is-
think the board would take offense to,
Not
some-
this board.
Okay.
So the way the legislation is written for the reorganization
Right.
is that the reorganization had to be, the plan had to be adopted before July 30th.
Yeah.
And then things get squishy, because there is a requirement that there be two audits that are to be conducted. One is a forensic audit. I'm sorry, Edith. You're paying attention. Trudy, please, no distractions. Okay, thank you. I was apologizing. Okay, that's fine.
So they have the
So
deadline of
So
the-
they have,
yeah.
right, they have the requirement that there be two different audits. One is a
Right.
forensic audit, that's a deep dive. The other is an additional audit that looks at all of the things that are included in what the reorganization plan is supposed to do. That looks at duplication of services, that looks at headcount, that looks at where streamlining can take place. But that's not due until January 1st of 2020, at which point the MTA has a 90-day window to change the transformation plan. Or, if you read it a different way, they have 90 days from now to make any revisions, which doesn't make sense because the CTO won't even be appointed until
Right.
It doesn't make
by
any sense.
October 15th. So I've gone over, our testimony was about that yesterday.
Okay.
But I carry with me the law and that section and hope that by osmosis, I'll be able to understand it. So far, no.
Thank you for that.
Stuart, it sounds as though the data you're asking for is public in an area we didn't realize. So we're going to, the 2017, 2018 is available, 2019 may not be. So we can get that,
We should look at it.
yeah.
Like
to
we
you
wanted to
Yeah,
at that time.
exactly. I think that's a great idea.
Yes, new business.
New business, I left it in next to, well, actually where Lisa is right over there, Andrew.
I saw it.
Tomorrow, the MTA is doing Disability Awareness Month. Since we're in the Disability Awareness Month, the Michael J. Quill Depot, as well as Alex, is doing an event tomorrow at the.
Alex Good, not
Thank
Alex
you.
Partners.
Right.
Either
Different
way,
spelling.
thank you, Alex. Thank you. This will be tomorrow, July 26th, from 10 a.m. to 1. Everyone is welcome. They just want this. They're downstairs right now, passing the word around. Second, I also made a copy of something they're doing, disability self-identification. That's a little white paper I gave you, Andrew. That should be maybe distributed out, because it's glad to see something is going out and information is going out. That's the one thing. And one good note, I've been seeing on the Sea Beach line the beautiful art, and the 62nd Street station that is beautiful open, and it's nice to see the whole platform is even for
And
once.
How about that it's now got elevators at 62nd and New Utrecht? How
I
about
know
that?
it's on. I know I've seen it. It looks
Yeah.
nice.
Yeah, that's a major improvement for that junction point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And Andrew, regarding the F Express, right now.
Yeah.
I did remember. I live where I live on Ocean Parkway. I can see the F running, like you miss one, another one's not far behind. A lot of people are forgetting, and one thing I'm a little pissed with the elected officials, they're forgetting one very important thing. We need the F Express, but we also need, as I said last day at the board and on the News 11, that we need to get these officials to remember we need accessibilities for these stations. We need to make sure that safety comes in for everyone, not just disability and seniors, everyone. So I just want to make that clear.
Yeah, I should have actually.
No, it's okay.
On the service change issue, I should have mentioned the issue of the F Express. I spoke in opposition to the proposal because, and I was very surprised that their version of F Express does not exist south of Church Avenue. It's only between Church Avenue and J Street. Thus, it would bypass the quite growing neighborhoods of Windsor Terrace, Red Hook, Carroll Gardens, and Cobble Hill, especially since we don't have a Bergen Street lower level anymore, so it would go nonstop from 7th Avenue to J Street Metrotech. Yes, it's only 2 trains, but they were not able to really respond to how much additional wait time would there be for people at those stations, what would the crowding level be like. And when I asked Judy McLean, why are you not including, like the old F Express was, south of Church Avenue, just stopping at 18th Avenue and then to Kings Highway? Well, we just didn't. And I said, if you did that and made it the local north of Church Avenue so that you're not missing the important 4th Avenue and 9th Street junction, as well as all of these other places, how much? She goes, a similar amount of time saving. So, I don't know why, but apparently this is going to happen. Those stations are going to be bypassed at some point. There will be no express south of Church Avenue, which really moved, as I recall, on the old F Express. But that's what we have. Stuart.
As a rider of that train,
I know you are.
But right now when they have train, like we have bus bunching, we have train bunching. So they're at night or in the morning, they are making use of that track when they have issues. So it's technically possible.
Yeah.
They're not doing that other testing that we witnessed with regularity
Yeah.
at Church Avenue.
Right.
And again, when we had this discussion with the prior speaker, and maybe they would resurrect it, we spoke about the new, with the R line and other points along the way now at J Street Metrotech to connect with 6th Avenue service,
Yeah.
that skipping 9th Street was not necessarily a big issue. So I think we should, as a body, fight for South Brooklyn riders.
And you know what was really ironic, Stuart? There were several speakers on this topic from Coney Island who said the F takes us such a long time, when of course the D and the N are much faster routes to Manhattan than the F ever was.
I'll give in to you on the D, not the N. The N is still experiencing problems. They've opened the stations.
Yeah.
We still have our old business with graffiti
Yeah.
and the delays, but
Yeah.
they're still not making progress with the express track. So it's still running local after it leaves 59th Street. So
Many elected
the
officials
N is
or their
very
representatives
slow.
spoke in favor of the F Express, who were from the southern part of Brooklyn, and obviously Councilmember Brad Lander and others from the northern section of Brooklyn were not in favor.
Can we do a letter, or is this set in stone at this point?
I think it's pretty set, but we can certainly send a letter. Obviously,
When
we
do
can- we're
when
free
do
to
they
do
do the
anything.
bidding for the routes? You know, the
I don't know the answer to that, but this is going
Okay.
to go into effect in November, I think.
so I would think we have a little
September
time.
or
if,
November, I forget which one now.
You know,
To the locations, I'm sorry, to the field trips?
Yeah,
We have
absolutely.
10 minutes.
Yeah, we have, yeah, Edith.
The answer to our request about removing 15 inaccessible elevators, replacing with 15 inaccessible elevators, basically gave us the same answer from the MTA, which was, we spent 5 years working on this plan already. We're not going to stop. And my question to them was, well, the ADA was already 25 years old when you started this project. Why?
answer.
And there's a lot of discussion, and it's probably going to be the next lawsuit, which is not my favorite thing, but I'm tired. I'm tired of the board speaking about how wonderful the service access plan is, with people repeatedly talking about how we were left out of everything that was being done. We ride, we pay, we do all those same things. And, it's like we write letters, we get no response, or we get a half-assed response.
Who do you write to exactly?
Well, actually, there was just a letter that went to Foy by all the politicians in the community, from the feds down, from Fed to City Council. But it's the attitude is that it's set in stone, and August 3rd is rapidly coming, and a shuttle's a possibility. We have goddamn mountains that you can walk through currently. And this jerk from government and government relations comes in and says, it's not impacting riders, but it's impacting the community. It's impacting everyone who goes through the mountain to get to Fort Washington, which is, I now know the height. It's like, these are ridiculous heights we're talking about.
Yeah.
Anyone who's visited Washington Heights should understand the concept.
The glaciers deposited many things
Yes,
there.
it was,
Yeah.
they're glacial moraines going all the way up.
Yes, indeed.
And I live right at the bottom of it. It's just a feeling that there is, let's compare it to the L. The governor said, I don't want this, and it stopped. We want someone to say, damn it, they should go to the platform. I mean, we put up with 5 years to have them go to the platform.
What does Alex Elegudin say when you put this to him?
Alex never replied. I sent him a long email. I've called him. Well, we're working on it.
Yeah, yeah.
You
It's a
know,
lawsuit waiting to happen, obviously.
oh, yeah. I mean, how do you build 15 elevators that don't go to the platform? It's great we're doing 50 elevators.
And taking a station out of service for almost a year to do it.
Each of them out of service
Yeah,
for a year.
yeah.
And starting this plan 2 months early.
We might be able to get back to this topic, Edith, but I just want to do the field trip issue before our speaker arrives, if we could.
I just, I'm just feeling as though no one gives a damn,
It's not true.
except those of us who are impacted. You got a lot of little old Jewish ladies going to the Glotz Senior Center.
I just heard something. Oh, I see. So, suggestions for our field trip. I did make a request to see if the new bus command center was in any shape ready to receive us. It is it's just walls and a building at this point, but the interesting part that we would want to see, which was the working electronic wall, is not yet up. So I wouldn't recommend we make the trip just to see a new building. So, in East New York. So, Deborah, did you say something? Oh, okay. You're just grinning. That's. Yeah, it's a shell. So am I after yesterday, but yeah. Interested to hear recommendations for other things, other possibilities for our trip.
I know Christopher has several.
Yeah, let's hear it. Stuart.
What about looking at the next phase of the Second Avenue subway?
Is that accessible?
I don't know that the tunnels are accessible to anyone just
Right
yet.
now, there's not much to see
Yeah.
from, and the tunnels are definitely not accessible. I mean, if we insisted, we could go down, but then you have to go up and down because there's no connection between what was built 1,000 years ago.
I didn't necessarily mean the tunnel, the community awareness effort, what it look,
I mean,
what's
there's a
happening to
center
the-
open on 125th Street.
Yeah, but
That's for sure. Yeah.
But that takes, you can go through there yourself. It's better, it's not a group kind of thing.
East Side Access tours are available.
I don't know if they're accessible. Yeah, it's not accessible.
It's not a really accessible trip, though.
But do we have enough options where you should be able to go?
We could possibly take a look at Harold interlocking and the progress being made there for East Side Access, Penn Access, and a new Sunnyside station. But again, don't know unless we got a private train to take us. How it?
Have those, they have work too.
Yeah, we could probably get a private train, and then it would be accessible because you'd be able to see everything from that vehicle. That's just an idea.
That's good.
And that's Harold interlocking, as you probably know, is the U.S.'s version of Clapham Junction. It's the busiest rail junction in the country, in North America, actually. But I'm open to other. Hey, John. John, have some refreshment, John. We're almost ready for you.
Monahan?
Moynihan.
Moynihan.
No, Monahan is the chief of police.
We had, the LIORCC had asked about Moynihan, and we're told that it's not a lot to see right now, but we can check into that.
Is there any?
That's the whole list.
Oh, go ahead, Trudy.
Let me just say before I forget this, and then Trudy's next. I don't know that it's in any possible, and maybe our speaker will have some info on this, but perhaps we could visit the Kawasaki plant and see what our next round of subway cars are doing. So that's also a possibility. But Trudy, please.
So I was going to suggest, even though I think most of us have been there on our own, but we haven't been there as a group, I don't even know ever,
Where?
to the Transit Museum. And they have, which is a wonderful place to go.
wonderful,
And it might be great for us to go as a group.
I'd actually thought about that as well, and we can follow up on that. So,
Yeah.
all right, why don't we get people to?
On new business, you casually, quickly mentioned a reduction in B train service, which I'm a big fan of and ride almost every day. Could you elaborate on what's going on and why? Why are they, I mean, the signs are up, they're always doing track work after 8:30, and now you say it's going to be formalized and
Yes, it's going to be
de jure
formalized.
as well as de facto reduction in service. It's very annoying.
I asked President Byford, much as they do in London, if you're going to codify this for the foreseeable future while this work is going on, can you put signs in stations giving the time of the last B or the last W in those particular locations? And he said he absolutely would do that, which will make it won't be a guesswork anymore.
Can we go back to the last topic?
Sure,
We didn't.
sure.
I just wondered, because we had the ultra-wideband tour, and now they're on the next more complex stage of it, where it's multi-lined, and wondering if anybody wanted to get an update on that, too.
Where is that? In the same place the last time was?
No.
Oh, on the J line. Yeah. Yeah.
And maybe that's not a field trip, maybe that's a guess.
Yeah, maybe that is.
Let's do Chris and then let's go to John.
Yeah, Chris, and then we're going to go to our speaker.
Chris, if you can rattle them off, I'll write them down, and then we can.
Actually, Andrew already said it.
Okay, wonderful. Oh, okay. So it's a pleasure to introduce John Santamaria to everybody. If anybody knows car equipment, it's John. He's been in transit since '97. He's currently the Vice President and Chief Mechanical Officer within the Division of Car Equipment. I'm not going to go into his bio. We can distribute that to you, but as I'm sure everyone is aware, we have several new cars either on order and or in the process of delivery. You've heard about the trials and tribulations of the R179s, and if you haven't, there's new problems with internal walls in them, which are being looked at. We have gotten R188s on the 7 line. We have R211s on order, and we have R262s in the far future, I guess. So to put pictures and a face on all of this, thank you so much for coming, John.
No problem. I'll just wait to have control of the screen and then we'll speak. Do you prefer I sit so everyone can hear? Is that?
As long as you use the mic. Would you like this to play along with?
That's okay. So, to add to that, so I've been in transit. I'm in my 23rd year. Before that, I spent a little over 14 years working in the military aerospace defense world. So when I came to transit, it was a perfect fit because the next generation subway cars were essentially that next level of a complex aircraft. So I was able to contribute with my background to bring New York City Transit to the next stage, so to speak. So, stick with the mic, okay.
Do you want to stand? If you feel more comfortable, you can just pick up the mic and hold it.
Realize it was wireless. Okay, so as long as I don't look awkward holding this microphone, that's all fine with me. You know, if I can get the remote to work, then it'd be even better. But oh, okay, thank you. So, a quick agenda. I'm going to give you a brief fleet overview, and then I'd like to talk about the R179, R211, and R262. And I added as a special bonus at the end, I want to talk about the vacuum train. Unexpected, but I just threw that in. You know. So just if you look at this chart in green shows you the average age of each car class, and in orange is the fleet size of that car class. As Mr. Albert always points out, the R32 is the oldest car in the fleet, 52, 53 plus years. It has a fleet size of 222 cars. You know, but this just gives you a quick snapshot. And what I did is I added a few boxes on top to show you which new car classes will replace those. Excellent, excellent. So the R179.
Imagine if you gave the MDBF for these too.
Yes, I have it. I just didn't include it. So, right, so the cost performance is gauged by mean distance between failure. So the R179 essentially will replace the R32, R42. The R211 replaces the R46. And then later on, we'll talk about the R262 replacing the 62 and 62A. Now, I'm going to take credit personally, not that I like to brag. I came up with the R262 reference designation because I don't want people to forget about the 62. If it was up to me, I would have probably named the R179 the R232, something like that, because let's keep the cars. And the later on in life, when the R68 and 68As are replaced, it will be called the 268. You have my word. Yes, I do. I think, as best as I understood, when you go to get a contract awarded, there is a list of available contract numbers, but you can ask for a certain. You can go out of line, and I just wanted the car classes that.
No, I guess what I'm asking is, where do the numbers initially come from?
There's
I've
some
always
list of
wondered-
contract
this is
awarded.
something, as long as we have you here, I've
Yeah.
always wondered.
And I assume that the 211 will also replace the R44s on the Staten
Andrew,
Island Railway.
could it-
Yeah, I didn't
Yeah.
include. I don't. I'm sorry. I don't talk about Staten
So
Island
it's
much.
based on the contract number, is that what it is?
Yes, it's a contract number. So
Okay, thank
the
you.
R211 technically is the R34211 contract. Okay, so again, since everyone loves to see that fleet overview, what I added here is a chart of all the car classes based on where they reside by division, in a current status. So that tied in with the previous chart. At least you could see what the cars look like. Andrew doesn't need that. I'm sure if I took all the car classes away and I gave you a quiz, you could answer all of these. Okay. So the R179. This is just some top-level information. I'm not going to go into the details. It lets you know when the contract was awarded, what its original schedule was. But right now we have 238 cars delivered, 224 cars, or technically 27 trains, are currently in passenger service, and production deliveries do continue. I'll get a little more detail. So this is the R179 car being built in Plattsburgh, and there are 22 different production stages where the car gets from the beginning to the end where it finally goes out the door. So these are just some examples. Station 14 on the left shows you the car shell. They seal the car shell before it goes through a water test. That's one of the processes. And on the right, you see a Station 22 and 23 where there's some final inspection going on before the cars get loaded on a vehicle and make their way here. And then just some quick little photos. So, like I said, we have 224 cars in service. As it stands right now, we're looking at, we're looking at the final car, the 316th car, which will soon be 318 cars because Bombardier is so late, to be done by the end of this year. Technically, the original contract was 300 cars, but because of liquidated damages, they owed us so much money, we sat down and got 18 more cars out of this deal. We converted 8-car trains into 10-car trains for the C line. R211. Again, right? We have a schedule. It's on schedule right now. I just got back from a business trip. The first initial test train, the R211A, will be here a year from now, July 2020. And roughly 10 months past that, we will get in the first open gangway test train, the R211T. 2 of them will come at once. So the open gangway comes in May 2021, 2 trains. And then the R211S for Staten Island will come in December 2021. And excuse me? So the train is 10 cars. So 10 cars next year, the R211A, 20 cars following year, open gangway. And those 20 cars, just so you know, there's 2 types of open gangway. There's a hard wall and there's a bellows soft wall. I'm getting one of each. so then we could see how they each work individually in the system, mix and match.
You know, the It's Showtime crowd was going to love those cars.
I know.
Yeah.
I know.
yeah.
And what lines are those going to be tested out on? What line?
Anywhere really the R runs now. It's any B division. I can't answer that yet in terms of what lines they will run. It's most likely, well, they will, during the test phase, everywhere in the B division. We're going to run them everywhere when they're not in passenger service. And then when we get to that last phase of the testing, 6 to 8 months testing, it'll go into a 30-day test in passenger service.
What is open gangway?
So open gangway, you have
I don't know.
you have no end doors.
I am now admitting that I'm a Luddite as far as all of
That's
these
okay.
terms are concerned.
So just to get into the details, because of we want to test the open gangway before we commit to going down that path. The base contract of 640 cars will be a standard fleet, and the decision to go. I actually skipped a page. Excuse me. So the initial base contract, 430 cars, will be non-open gangway, traditional cars. When the open gangway test car comes in, we'll use that time to determine what do we want to do with the option of this contract. And the option calls for another 1,037 cars. So if the open gangway testing works out so well, we'll make sure that these 1,037 cars are delivered in open gangway format. I don't like diving into something new till we prove it out. Yes?
We often get to see the buses before they're all bought. There have been considerable problems with what I call the walking poles. You keep moving where the poles are in each, and you can't get around them. If you're coming on one side, you got to go out on the other side. You can't get around that pole if there's a baby carriage, people with luggage, whatever. I love going to, the next stop and being lost because I can't get off the train. Can there be an effort made to reach out to the community with the cars before we commit to getting so many of them to see whether they're going to be workable for people in wheelchairs?
It's the layout you're referring to, correct?
It's the pole.
Where the placement of poles.
Right, the placement of poles. I mean, you move the pole from that open cluster area in the area where there are no seats. There's just the open space at the ends of the cars, and suddenly you have nothing to hold on to except the two bars in the wheelchair area. And the pole by the seats ends up being a total cluster because you can't get through it. There are so many people trying to hold on to that pole. It's just bad design. I'm sorry.
So let's talk about these test trains. The initial layout of the poles, the seating, the initial layout to design these test trains is done by operations planning with some input from customers as well as simulation of passenger flow. The beauty is when these cars come in, then your request is going to happen. We're going to be looking at these cars. Changing a pole location is the easiest thing to do because it doesn't affect the overall car design for its crash worthiness. So during that testing phase, when it's in passenger service and whatever else that operations planning does to get input on its design, and the design meaning seat layout, pole layout, that's when it's done. So we could then make the changes while in the production schedule for these cars. If you look at the schedule, and the test cars come in, we have them for a year to run around. Production cars don't come in for 12 to 14 months after that. So things like that, location of pole, and this is aside from what the ADA requirements are. That's not going to change. I need X amount of room in certain areas, but everything else, the stanchion poles where they are, all that will be taken into consideration during the testing. I'm not going to say we're going to change it. It all depends on...
I mean, when they had the one at Hudson Yard,
right,
that was very good, except we needed more people in the train to simulate traffic. I mean, and
So they use software for that too. And I don't know. They take the 95th percentile of what a person's size is.
That really was good,
Yeah.
having the sample train at Hudson Yards, because they actually got so much feedback
They
about
did.
where the
Got
handhelds are.
a lot of feedback. That was very good because we
I
did
mean,
get a lot of
they
customers.
had the space for the wheelchair was fairly good, but the poles were still an issue. I mean, and I want a pole. I want to be able to hold on to a pole.
I brought this up when we were at Hudson Yards, which is again for short people who can't get to the pole.
I challenged.
What? Height challenge? No, I'm just about a little under 5 foot, and I call myself short. And it's perfectly politically correct to do so. Anyway, a long time ago when I was at the MTA, I was going to start my own protest group called SPIT, Short People in Transit, because they took away all the straps, and initially subway riders were called strap hangers. That's where we got the strap hangers campaign, whatever. Is there any thought of having, it was never answered when we were at Hudson Yards, of going back to the old, having straps all along the way, besides the two high up bars across the strap, across the top, which you got to be 6 foot to reach?
So, with respect to the straps, I'm not sure if we're going that route, but I do have some testing going on with the smaller hand grabs. Rather than a strap, a physical hard, yeah.
But low enough so that a person who is under 5
Has to meet
foot.
that magical height of the 95th percentile shortest person, yes.
Thank you.
I'm not guaranteeing it. I'm saying we will look at it.
At least you're looking into it.
Yes,
Thank
absolutely. Some highlights on the R211. The program's on schedule. As I said, we have design reviews. I just got back from, I don't want to brag, I just got back from Madrid the night before last to oversee what's going on with the air conditioning. But I say Madrid, but I'm in the middle of nowhere. Let's make that clear. 30-day look ahead. And I'm not going to read into this, but the point I'm trying to make is the design of the car is on schedule. And it was stated during the board meeting yesterday, as Kawasaki were present, they were put right on the, is it on schedule? Yes, it is. I spoke about the options. So I want to show you some pictures of, this is not the Hudson Yards. The Hudson Yard mock-up that you saw was a cardboard model. It was a it was a wooden model. It was not real. It was more to get input. What you're seeing here is the first mock-up. This is actually in Kobe, Japan, when we went a few months ago. And I just wanted to show you, as they're fabricating the side panel with the doors being installed. This is the bonnet. The bonnet is the front of the car. To the right is the truck frame. The truck frame is actually, the truck is what the wheels and the motors are attached to, and the truck holds the entire car shell up. You have 2 trucks per car. They will be CBTC installed, not ready. CBTC installed. Do all of you know what the term anti-climber is? Right? Okay, so I don't have to explain it. So this picture then shows you how they take the anti-climber, connect it to the end underframe, and finally on the bottom right, it goes into the car shell, and it's attached to the car shell. So actually, the name actually tells you what it is. In the event of an unforeseen collision, the anti-climber stops the possibility of the car either in front of you or behind you from climbing up and hitting that. Its job is to prevent the climb. That's right. That's right. But I do have some good news to report. So these are actual photos. July 12th, the first 4 car shells of the R211 have been delivered to Lincoln, Nebraska. When I say car shell, all that is strictly an empty shell. So right now what's going on is these 4 vehicles will start to be stuffed, as we say. It'll be filled with all the innards. The goal is... No, this... Yes, this is the berth, right. That's right. Very good. So this is great. It's in Lincoln, Nebraska. Oh, I jumped ahead. And like I said, the contract's moving ahead on schedule. We'll have these cars here next July, and we'll start testing on site in July. But even before that time frame, I have folks going back and forth to Lincoln as systems get installed. Testing has to be done on each subsystem. It's a long process. Any questions on the R211?
Quick question. We used to build cars, I thought, in Yonkers and Hormel. What happened? Why are we in Nebraska?
So we have a Buy America. Kawasaki has a Buy America requirement, 70% Buy America. The R211 schedule, at its peak, will have 40 cars a month being delivered to New York City Transit. It starts off slow, 20 to 25 to 30, but at its peak ramp up, 40 cars a month. Both facilities, Lincoln, Nebraska, and Yonkers, need to be used by Kawasaki to meet that demand. Lincoln cannot do it alone, nor can Yonkers. And I think it's going to be 2020 or 2515 per month coming from each location.
How big a subway system does Lincoln, Nebraska have?
Zero. Justify a plant. There's cornfields everywhere. The land is cheap. It's huge. And it's next to their motorcycle plant. It's a very impressive facility.
Very quick question. As I understand it, the 211s are going to have wider doors than previous car classes.
Yes.
Has there been any analysis of what the impact on dwell times will be?
So I can't give you the actual answer to what the dwell time is, but the door size, the speed of the door opening, the location of the doors, all tied in with operations planning. All these simulations were run to get the maximum passenger flow with minimized dwell time.
We don't have a number as to what the impact on dwell times would be.
They're all estimates, and you know what? It's until you put it in service, I don't believe any estimates because you're required on passenger behavior. So, and that's during that test time, we'll do that as well.
And the open gangway was supposed to have passengers move in much more quickly.
Yes.
But if you have what I had this morning, somebody blocking the door and people having to push that person out of the way.
Right, we can't control behavior. So the 211 not only has wider doors, there are 6-inch niches on each side of the door, so hopefully people standing on the side won't block the doorway. Theoretically, that was the goal. Right.
If they turn themselves, perpendicular, that's cool.
I can't control, we can't control the public behavior, but our goal is to try to minimize.
Sorry, one more quick question. Will all current door control features like local recycle be included on the next car classes?
Plus some.
Oh, excellent.
I'm not going to tell you what the other ones are, but this plus some. So we'll talk about the R262. I'm sorry, you had a question? So the R262 right now, we're writing the technical spec as we speak. The development, as I mentioned, it replaces the R262 and 62A fleet. This is for the A division. So what we're looking at is roughly, with fleet expansion, approximately 1,400 cars. It'll be supported. It's, as we know right now, everything is to be determined with the fast forward plan. It's all being looked at. It'll go on the A division, probably Lexington Avenue is what we're looking at. That's what it says today. What we're doing is the R211 technical spec is being used as a baseline, but this is a smaller car. This is a 51-foot car compared to the R211, which is a 60-foot car. But that's what we have now. The A division, they're all 51-foot cars. They are. The A division's 51 feet.
Okay, age is fine. But by the time it trickles down to opening on a platform, it's not going to be opening on the little humps, which are the gap reduction. So what happens is, even when it's the same size, they're not lining up, and they're creating an artificial gap.
They're not lining up to what?
Okay, your platform is not flat. Platforms are not flat, except maybe this beautiful new one at Utrecht. In general, your platform goes like this, and the MTA goes out and figures where the doors supposedly open, the boarding areas, and tries to make that point a little higher. As we call them, platform humps. If the platform hump doesn't line up, for example, on the A, where the platform hump is right under the conductor, and by the time you get to the door, the gap is even higher. The gaps are running 3 inches for many trains. And yes, the issue has to do with the fact that there are 3 different trains running on the A at the moment. So the problem is that if you tinker with we need somehow to get to a uniform train.
So that's what this is for the A division. Don't confuse the A with the R262s. So no, let me. I want to address your concerns. So you raise a good point. So if I have a uniform fleet now on the A division on Lexington Avenue, all the same car, all the same size,
they should all line up on the humps, right?
with automatic leveling of the cars. That's what we're looking at for the 262. It's early yet, but we're requesting at least the car builders to look at an automatic leveling design. Can't guarantee it, but that's going to be the ask.
Because that has a major impact on the likelihood of people in chairs, walkers, and rollators actually using the train rather than the very expensive accessorized train.
Right. So if we know, I'm making this up, there's 30 stations on this line. If we know that 6 of those stations have platform height issues, it'll be programmed into the train that when you get to that station, you have to do some height adjustment. That's the goal. I'm not going to guarantee that it's going to happen, but that's what we're asking. So the timing, I'm going to answer your question in a politically correct manner, TBD. No, it's driven by, it's actually driven by funding. You know, today I can't answer this question. In 60 days, I may be able to give you exact answers. I just can't right now. It's being driven by funding.
Yeah, so why is the local sign why is it down here? It's supposed to be on the side.
That's just an artistic rendering. That's not meant to be anything but you know, that's not an official design at all.
Yeah, but the CBTC is for Lexington Avenue line. But the 5 trains and 2 trains will be from the cars, right? But the 5 and 2 because the Lexington Avenue line, because 2 functions of sharing.
Right, but right now this done, and maybe I shouldn't have put this image on. This was just for you have to give me some artistic license here. I just threw that on there to pretty up the document. Right. And like I didn't mention too, on the R211s, it's all LED lighting on the outside. There's no more of the headlight look at all. It's all futuristic. I think if you look back, you could actually, the artist rendering shows it, right? No more of the round headlights. All right, folks. I tried to hit it all. Let's go to my bonus topic. Has nothing to do. Yes, sir.
Sorry, I thought you were not done. Seating, what we call conversational seating.
I hate it.
Well, there's 2 people in this room who love it. That's why I like the B train.
That's my own opinion. That's not an official.
That's kind of gone. That's gone. Why? Take up this room?
To the best of my knowledge, the studies done on seat placement, passenger movement, drove that. You know, in terms of.
John, I think what drove it was you can get more standees in without conversational seating.
Yep.
Yeah.
I figured maybe if we want to have a conversation, we'll go on Long Island Railroad or Metro North. I want to get you from point A to B. So here's my bonus. It has nothing to do with revenue cars. We have this year we received 3 new vacuum trains. They're currently in service. You know, you don't see them because this happens all during the night. You know, it's a 3-train system where the middle car actually performs the vacuuming, and the end cars are filter cars that capture all the debris. This is going on as we speak. There's a photo of a couple of the vacuum trains running around. You know, you may have it seen coming back or whatnot. So to date, 3 trains are in service. We have sucked up over 1,500 miles of track debris since they've been delivered this year. And, well, someone may say, well, what does that do for us? The amount of track fires are clearly going down as a result of this, you know? Yes. Yeah. No, NEU Socofair from France. So 3 of them, they're running around doing great. They're still under warranty, but we're watching them closely. There's a whole schedule plan laid out where one is running in the A division, one is running B, the other one's running crosstown. Right. The whole plan is, if I'm not mistaken, I think it's to try to hit the entire system within a 3-month window, and then go back.
Do stations have to be closed while that's happening? No.
No,
Because I
no.
know, like, I'm on the 7 and it's closed again at night, so I didn't know if we were running them there. My next question is, we talked, as you came in, about the possibility of going to see any of these at the Kawasaki plant in Yonkers. Is any of that an option, or anything there that's under construction, or would looking at the vacuum trains in action be something that is?
So looking at the vacuum trains in action is a little dangerous. There's no room on it
Okay.
to carry, and you standing on a platform. What maybe is a possibility is once the cars start coming to Yonkers for the 211, we could work something out. Once they start going into production, that's a ways out yet. But Andrew, I'll leave it in. When I get a closer schedule, we could talk.
I have 2 questions. One is, you were talking about the water testing, and I wondered, what does that even look like? How is that done?
I wish I would have known. I could have brought in a video and showed you. Basically, when the car's finally put together, and I think that was station 14, it literally runs through a shower. The entire car, you're simulating torrential rain. Remember, this car's all put together, it's all sealed, and it sits under there, I think, for an hour, and then it's inspected to make sure there are no water leaks coming in.
That's it. And then my second one is on the stopping lines, and brakes or the weight of the car in the industry. Is that something that's that an effort is being made towards, because it has capacity, ramifications of being able to stop a car, the braking system being able to stop a car?
Excellent question. So part of the car acceptance, and we don't just do this for a new car, this is safety related. So let me go into, every year we test every car class. There is a braking distance requirement that has to be met at different speeds and at different weights. So every car, even the 32s, 42s, once a year we test these cars. So going 25 miles an hour, carrying a load of X amount of pounds, it has to stop between these 2 distances. That's done every year on every car class. For any new car, this is done for every single unit coming in.
Is there an industry effort to try and shorten up so that you can brake faster?
So there's 2 schools of thought there. You move the cars faster to get them to the location faster, but now you're braking harder, maybe introducing an uncomfortable ride, maybe wearing out brakes and track and wheels faster. So you have to strike a happy balance. And and that's why we've actually increased speeds already on a good portion of signs. So it's all about safety.
Yeah.
Yes, ma'am.
Probably be an even dumber question than I asked before.
This is the spit president.
Yeah, exactly. I've been called many other things also. Anyway, what is the significance of the 2 moons or the 2 circles on your logo? Is this looking into the future about Mars or whatever the planet is that has 2 moons? Or
I really don't know. I really don't
whoever
know.
well, could you find out? I mean, it's just interesting. John's question. I'm on the outing thing again. How about the track geometry cars?
They don't work. They're not under me.
They're not under you.
But we do have under the
That was I
Department
went
of
out on
Track.
the track geometry car one time. It was a fascinating outing. You know,
Right, that runs around all night. That's under the Division of Track, and that tests the integrity of the rail system. Yes. Okay, sorry about that.
Not you. You're fascinating. You could talk to us for 2 hours, and we could talk to you for 2 hours. But we do have another presentation, so let's do one more question, and then let you go. And
I'm really fascinated with the trains, but the concern that I'm seeing, the years for the Staten Island train, because I know if Scott was here, he would be jumping already on this. I thought we were told that the part of the R211 first sets were supposed to go to Staten Island, because they need those trains like now.
That was an initial
2020.
No, I'm saying that initial decision was probably made during Tom Prendergast's time here. What drove it to change the order, I really don't know. That was an initial, very early in the phase, and some of it's politically driven. I really can't answer to that. I'm going to leave my opinion on Staten Island alone. We'll leave that alone. No, I don't think they need new cars.
John, we may have some follow-up questions that we can send you if that's okay. All right, so if you guys have any additional questions, send them to me or to Bradley, and we will get them to John.
Thank you. I hope I was concise, clear, and
Wonderful. Thank you so much.
wonderful.
Very interesting.
no charge.
Thanks again. Thanks again.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So we have a very interesting,
John, you're welcome to stay for this if you want.
talk for you now.
Another very
Another very interesting talk. I was privileged to sit in on one of President Byford's untangling task force meetings. Untangling meaning making the transit system operate more efficiently by having trains not make so many switching between tracks, making routes possibly more direct, less delays. It was fascinating. I offered my opinion on some of the possible route reshuffling, and the PCAC is actually fortunate this summer, and I don't think it's just this summer, I think he's been here before that, but to have Uday Schultz with us, who has made a real study of this untangling route simplification protocol, has actually met with a couple of members of President Byford's untangling group.
At their request.
At their request, I might add, yes, which shows you he knows his stuff. And we're going to make you, or Uday is going to make a presentation now. If you could, because there's a lot of stuff in here, it's probably best if you hold your questions till he's done. While we are looking at 3 different route simplification protocols, we're going to just present one now because I'm sure there'll be enough to talk about on this, just on this one. So Uday, take it away.
Thank you, Andrew, for the introduction. So yeah, I'm going to walk you guys through this issue. Thank you so much for allowing me to speak. It's quite a privilege. So yeah, let's get started. So the obvious question here is what exactly is route simplification? Well, route simplification is it's rerouting trains to reduce the number of merge interactions in the system. Merge points are where 2 services converge onto one track, and they're a frequent source of delays and conflicts, which we'll go into in more detail later. It's equally sort of a planning ethos that prioritizes capacity and reliability. We want to look at the way we actually run the trains and run the various service patterns, how that impacts system reliability and system capacity, and we want to do that on a system scale. We want to escape the sort of line-by-line method of planning that has ruled at New York City Transit for many years. We want to start looking at the entire system and how interactions across the system come to impact these really important factors. So why don't we talk a little bit about what the current service plan looks like. So in the AM peak service pattern, which is a little bit different from the PM peak surface pattern, but basically it's the general idea. There are over 40 individual merge points, so over 40 places where trains from different lines merge onto one track. 20 out of the system's 24 lines share track with at least one other route. Most lines share with many more than one other route. What this means, especially in the system with its unreliability of these days and with its long lines and variable operating environment, variable operator performance, it means we get delays. If two trains arrive at the same merge point at the same time, they obviously can't go through the merge point at the same time, so one has to wait. That causes a delay. Those of you who ride, for example, the A, B, C, and D lines, Central Park West, well, I'm sure have noticed this at 59th Street. These delays cascade around the system. What you see is when a train gets late at one merge point, it then arrives at its next merge point late, which then will likely throw off that merge point, and so on. So what we have is this system that is almost singularly incapable of providing reliable high-capacity service because of this issue with service design. There is simply too much interaction between routes to maintain reliability in our current operating environment. Now, the system, its service patterns were, designed in relatively similar manners across both divisions. But given the history of the B division, or the lettered lines, if you will, is much more impacted by these complex service patterns than is the A division. The A division certainly has its really complex and really fraught merges. Rogers Junction, in our report, was one of them. But the B division is sort of on a level of its own in terms of service complexity. But I think, we've understood the reliability aspects of this. I think it's important to keep this in mind. But I think as we move forward with urban growth, with resignaling, it's also really important to understand the implications these routes have on capacity. So every time a train misses a merge slot or a train moves slowly through a switch, you're losing capacity. That's a slot that a train could have been using that it's not using. These little losses, they add on to each other. And so if you look at the entire system and you look at the capacity we're losing on the entire system, it is quite large. There are also merge points, of course, whose inefficiencies are spectacular, for lack of a better word. DeKalb Avenue Junction in Brooklyn on the BD, N, and Q lines. We lose somewhere near a third of our potential capacity through the area because of these merge delays and the related signaling issues. So I think that, some of this is an infrastructure problem just as much as it's a service design problem. But I think it's really important to keep in mind the impacts that this service design and this service layout we have today is having on our ability to provide service to our riders. So I think, again, with the sort of tumult of today's subway system, it's also really important to contextualize this effort and what's going on currently. So we, of course, have the reliability issues that we've mentioned. Trains.
Plus, it's always night in your pictures.
It is always night in my pictures. These are all my pictures, so hope you're liking them. So, as we all know, the subway is having its issues with reliability. OTP is on the upswing, but run times are still quite long, and trips are unreliable. There are many service gaps. And for a city of the size and influence of New York, this is just simply not a tenable situation in terms of how our subway is operating. There's also the pressure of CBTC or ultra-wideband installation that's coming down towards us. Now, routes and CBTC would not seem directly related, but they actually have really big impacts on each other. If you're installing CBTC on a really sort of contained line, as they've done on the 7 and the L line, it's a bit simpler. Your car equipment and system compatibility needs are more contained, and the sort of installation process is therefore a little bit more simple. This is in fact what other cities have. Most other cities have networks that are a lot less complex than ours, so they're able to go about CBTC installation line by line. In New York, this is basically just not possible. With the degree of complexity and interaction between corridors in our system, we really are looking at a pretty gigantic systems management and car equipment management problem that's coming with the rollout of CBTC. So on the one side, simplifying the routes and simplifying our service structures will really actually help speed up the installation of these new technologies. The other side is actually getting the most out of the technology. Those other systems I mentioned in Europe and Asia, because of their simple routes and because of the fact they're not having to program their schedules and service levels to account for the potential of these merge delays, they're able to run as much as 42 trains per hour. That's one train every 85 seconds on some of their lines. In New York City, our CBDC projections have us at maybe 32 trains per hour, or a train every 115 seconds. So we're really not able to leverage the full potential of the technology because of this complexity issue. So I think that, as we're looking at ways to leverage our investment in the Fast Forward plan, we really need to be thinking about how route simplification will play into this. And the third issue, of course, is the growth pressures. We have a growing system. People are moving into new places. We're seeing new travel patterns appear, and our current network is, not really able to handle that ridership. So as Andrew mentioned, we focused on 3 areas in this project. The 34th Street and Broadway merge on the NQR and W lines, the system of merges that make up the Manhattan-Queens crossing, so the 60th, 63rd, and 53rd Street tunnels on the lines you see on the screen, and then the Central Park West and 8th Avenue corridor with the lines mentioned up there. For the purposes of this presentation, we're only going to look at 34th Street and Broadway because that's the analysis we feel is most complete and is, as our report 100 Days, 100 Nights mentioned, is one of the biggest wins to be had. So the current service, as you can see, looks like this. So what happens at 34th Street is as follows. I can't see laser pointer on the screen. So you'll see it. So, all right, yeah, I'll just go stand up there. Bring this. Okay. No. Oh, this one works. This works. Hello. Okay, yeah, that works. So you guys can all see I'm not blocking anyone. So thank you. So at 34th Street, N trains enter the station from the south from Brooklyn on the express track. Yeah. Just north of the station, they use this crossover here. This is a 13-mile-per-hour switch to cross onto the local tracks. And they follow the local tracks to Astoria, which is what you see here. This diverging move right here, this crossover, is of course, merging in front of R&W trains which are coming up into 34th Street on the local tracks. The reverse happens, of course, southbound. You have N trains coming into 42nd on the local track, and they cross in front of Q's onto the express track and head to Brooklyn that way. This interlocking right here, as Bradley, you want to give some personal stories?
All right, so basically, you guys can all remember from 100 Days and 100 Nights that in my route, I took the 405 and transferred to the Lex 59th Street station where I felt the pain of this interlocking. Basically, at Lex 59th Street, often there were big gaps in service, so if you are Astoria bound or you're trying to go to Queens Boulevard, your train could possibly get stuck behind some of these trains and there'd be large service gaps. At one point, I remember, I think the most extreme delay because of 34th Street interlocking was that I had to wait 36 minutes to actually board a train, and so people face that at that station often. Since the survey part has ended, I have changed my route. I have a one-seat ride now, which takes a little bit longer depending on service, and the route that I was doing before for the survey period could actually take longer because of the transfer time. But since then, I've been boarding the R's and W's at Whitehall Street, and because every day, I'm not kidding, every single day when you get to 34th Street, you have a dwell time that's quite extensive because you have to wait for trains crossing in front of the local service, the N, to get into the local track. So there's not a day that I go into that station where I don't have to wait on the R&W train.
Yeah, so this merge is really messing up capacity and reliability on the Broadway line. To put this in sort of numerical context, I think the next slide has it. So this is a chart. Sorry? No, I just wanted to. Okay, yeah. This is a chart that shows runtime variabilities. Now, you see these big black lines going up and down. I want you guys to focus on these middle boxes. This is the middle 50% of runtimes. So half of trains fall within this box of runtimes. all of the stations you see here, this is 14th to 23rd, 23rd to 28th, 28th, 34th, 34th, 42nd, 42nd, 49, 49, 57. All these stations are relatively evenly spaced. If you look at this one, you can see trains are taking a lot longer to get from 34th to Times Square or 42nd Street, and they're also incurring a lot more runtime variability, which is essentially saying many more gaps are being formed between 34th and Times Square than are anywhere else on the line. Now, why are so many gaps being formed there? Because of the merge. N trains are crossing in front of local trains at that point. You're getting delays and you're getting this variability. This contributes to the service problems that Bradley describes. It also reduces line capacity.
And this is all so that the N can stop at 49th when you already have, R's and W's there. So why the N and the Q aren't on the express and the R and the W on the local track would avoid this whole problem.
Exactly, yeah. So we have a proposal to mitigate this issue. Essentially what you do is do exactly what Andrew said. Keep the ends on the express track up to Lexington 63rd Street. Now, not shown on these track maps is there's another set of merges at something called the 11th Street Cut. The 11th Street Cut is a section of track that carries our trains to the Queens Boulevard line from Lex 59th Street. So what we're proposing to do is as follows. We send the N trains at Lex 63rd over the F line into Queens and route the R trains to Astoria, replacing N trains there and eliminating the merge at the 11th Street Cut. What exactly N trains do in Queens is yet to be determined. We're studying that as part of our Queens Route Simplification Initiative. But this is sort of the near-term proposal to reduce merging conflicts at 34th Street and again at the 11th Street Cut. Yeah.
One thing that came up in 100 Days, 100 Nights also was how tight the platform was at 59th Street, where you have 3 lines coming in there on a pretty narrow platform without usable space. Lexington Avenue. Whereas the 63rd Street platform is enormous relative to that. So it also helps with the platform crowding situation.
Yeah, the more service you run via 63rd Street, the better your platform crowding situation is going to be. Another thing that I think Bradley addressed in the report was this issue of the platform shuffle at Lex 59th Street. Because all trains at Lex 59th would be going to Astoria under the service plan, that wouldn't be an issue. If the train comes, you just get on it because they're all going the same place. Question, yeah.
I'm concerned about when you're rerouting trains, the impact on accessible stations.
Yeah.
If you run a train a different way, and you've now moved that accessible station from the green line to the yellow line or whatever, the impact that will have on accessibility.
Yeah, so we actually looked at that a little bit. This service plan will actually increase service levels at some key accessible stations at Lex 63rd and then at Roosevelt Island, 21st Street, Queensbridge. The impact on Queens is, as I said, yet to be assessed. But sort of key in this whole effort was we're really relying on cross-platform transfers, which, provided the platforms are in good shape, which of course, is a continuing issue, should not be difficult for those in wheelchairs. I completely agree. Yeah.
Okay, I'll repeat it. Like at 14th Street, you have 2 different gaps, both horizontal and vertical on both trains.
Yeah.
And the little sliding platforms, that would be a major concern. Now, that's a cross-platform. I'm more concerned with creating, the MTA creating a list and promulgating it of center platforms, so you know where you can rescue yourself.
Yeah.
If an elevator's out and you got to go backwards to go forward, we need that information. That information is not currently available. I personally have been asking for that information for over 25 years. We have never gotten it. No one seems to understand the question. It's very simple. Center platforms, turn around, make a list. Thank you.
That list should be really easy to put together.
It should.
Yeah.
I mean, I can recite my personal A-train list in Manhattan. Didn't come by it from a book, though.
Till 1987, the R train ran to Astoria. So, Bill, what was the basis for switching that? You know, we were around then. Is it still valid? And if not, they could easily switch that back.
So the reason they moved the R train away from Astoria in '87 was really twofold. Back then, as we all know, there was an issue with subway graffiti. The way they designed car layout patterns for the R line involved them storing many trains on the middle track of the Astoria line overnight. That made them very vulnerable to people who wanted to, tag the trains. One big initiative at that time was putting as many trains as possible within secure yard areas rather than on middle tracks and express tracks around the system. So that was the first input. The second input is that to this day, the R does not have a full-sized yard on its route. The Astoria version of the yard did not. Moving it to Queens Boulevard gave it access to Jamaica Yard, which again allowed the removal of trains from that middle track, and therefore the more, easy operation with fewer chances for graffiti. Yes.
The concern I'm seeing is there's still going to be a train traffic issue because the F train runs full strength. That's going to cause a train traffic issue because if the N train comes in...
Yeah. So this is, to be clear, the near-term alternative. Also, the thing about the F train is actually it does not fill all the track capacity in the 63rd Street Tunnel. It runs 15 trains per hour in the peak, which is about half of what the 63rd Street line could take. I think it's also important to keep in mind that, yes, we're adding a merge at Lex 63rd, but we're eliminating 2 merges in the process. So the net reduction in merges is still quite large. This isn't, a perfect alternative. And of course, we want to progress further in the long-term alternative, which is the next slide. But we believe that at least until investments are made, this is the best we can get. And this will do the best for capacity and reliability in the area. Yeah.
With Bill Guild also, because the question had gone to you on the movement of the R. If you had any nuggets of information also on that from the time, because I know Stuart had asked that of you.
Reason for doing it, boy, it was part of the general effort to have a yard along every line. That I thought was I'd forgotten the graffiti part of it.
But wasn't the R running to Astoria? Yeah, okay. But wasn't see, it's easier. Wasn't the R running to Astoria?
Yeah. It goes to Queens Plaza. It goes to Queens Plaza.
No, the R hasn't gone to Astoria in quite a while.
87, yeah.
87.
W. Yeah, W. Yeah.
Should I switch slides?
Yeah. Any more questions on the near-term alternative? Yeah.
Local tracks has to be in the... Why does the line on the local tracks is not connecting to the Queensboro line? And then after Lexington Avenue 59th Street, the next up is Queens Plaza. Which train's gonna take?
Sorry, the question is why are we taking the R off of Queens Boulevard?
No, off the Queensboro into Reval to Astoria, and the N goes to Lexington 63rd. Or switch over to F. That's merge.
Yeah, but the thing is that yes, we're adding a merge there, but there is a net reduction in merges because we're eliminating merges at 34th Street in both directions and at the 11th Street cut in both directions.
Yes, but the R train goes to Australia, but which other line goes to Queens Boulevard line on the local tracks?
So the Queens Boulevard line, what exactly we're doing there is still under study. The N train would be filling the capacity that the R train is not using. What exactly that service configuration would look like, we're still deciding what we're going to recommend in that field. So we don't exactly know yet.
Right. All right. Thanks.
Yeah, I think we can. Yeah. So long term, we want to make this simpler. I think Chris's point about the merge at Lex 63rd is correct. we want fewer merges. So what we're thinking is we send the N and the Q to 96th Street, R and the W to Astoria, and the Q will, of course, eventually go to 125th Street, which is, very much an impetus for this change because you need more capacity to serve the new segment of the line. So NQ 96th, R, W to Astoria. What exactly happens on Queens Boulevard? Again, we're not exactly sure what we're going to be doing in that area, under study. So you'd probably have something else on 63rd. And that, of course, eliminates the merge at 34th Street, at the 11th Street cut, and does not add back a merge at Lexington 3rd. So this is sort of the long-term optimal scenario.
What this means, obviously, for the Queens Boulevard line is you've removed a local, the R, and sent it to Astoria. So either you're going to make the N the local along Queens Boulevard, or you're going to make one of the other expresses, the E or the F, the local. Those are the options, right?
Yep. It's a complicated question with Queens Boulevard, given all the considerations about capacity and sort of destination flexibility. It's, again, we're deciding what we're going to recommend in that area.
One of the things about this route simplification plan, we are not saying that the flexibility of the system should be limited at all. The switches would stay in place, so if there's a delay, you could still take advantage of the flexibility the system has. But yeah.
We're just reducing the use of the switches, which has the reliability benefits in its own right.
We've as Ellen or Andrew said, there was a there was a meeting with some of the transit folks, high-level transit folks, at their request to talk about this. We've made an additional request for a meeting to move this along further before Uday goes along on his next adventure to Cambridge or Boston or Harvard.
So the next steps after we've resonated this to you, we're going to finish up our analysis in Queens and on the 8th Avenue corridor, sort of develop what recommendations we want to push in those areas. We also want to look at potential capital investments that could go along with a route simplification scheme. And then of course there are other areas of the system that could be sort of simplified, if you will. So we want to look at those, look at the various inputs to operations and various benefits that could be realized through simplification in those areas. And we of course want to present to New York City Transit. So I think with that we can go to questions. Q for questions. Yeah.
Yeah. Is there any net sum loss of transportation into the, quote, outer boroughs, as we are seeing with the buses? The bottom line is the buses are totally cutting off many end caps or slowing them down. How does this maintain or improve services at the end of the lines?
That's an excellent question, I think. And I think, well, in terms of what this will do to services at the ends of lines, I think it will absolutely be a positive. As you live in Washington Heights, correct? As I'm sure you know, one common dispatching maneuver on the A line is they'll have trains skip all the stops from 168th to 207th Street. That's usually caused by delays occurred along the length of the line. Two of the biggest delay generators, if you will, are the merges at Hoyt-Schermerhorn and the merge 59th Street. If you can take those out of the equation and sort of speed up and make operations more consistent, you should see less of those impacts. Beyond that, reducing the run times and reducing the runtime variability on these long lines would do a lot, not just to improve service consistency, but it might actually allow service increases. As I said before, the general axiom is the simpler the line, the more trains you can run on it. And that doesn't just apply in terms of the number of the trains the signaling system can accommodate, but the number of trains you can run for the same amount of money. Because if trains are taking less time to traverse their routes, that means you can run more trains with the same amount of equipment and the same amount of staffing. So there really are some very big benefits to be gained in speeding up the service and looking at how these capacity impacts can cascade around the system. Yeah.
What is the process for implementing this?
So, I mean, of course, these are our recommendations. They're not New York City Transit's plans. So we would have to present to them, and then.
Yeah, we have in process a request to present. We feel like 34th Street is a really important one to be one of the early ones they start, and it's sort of a rollout of a process. Andrew may be able to speak a little more about this, but we think particularly in terms of CBTC installation, getting moving on it is really important so that the cost and speed of implementing CBTC can get rolling.
Yeah.
Couple of questions that it's still a concern either way you're doing, and I agree with Andrew said earlier, because Queens Boulevard is a heavy line. The arch, as we're looking in Queens, ridership is up. Anything goes wrong with that train, there is no win on Queens Boulevard. When something goes wrong, that train is dead, and they call on radio, call lost time. They always have to ask them, how'd you lose your lost time? The concern is going to be you're still going to have an issue with the F train, because the F train, remember, we have two Fs going to Brooklyn, Kings Highway and Stowell Avenue. That causes, sometimes you might see, like after 2 minutes later, another F pops in, and the N's trying to come in somewhere to get the edges off. There's going to be a concern, because even the Q train that sometimes during rush hour does run every 6 to 8 minutes. Right now, there is a minor delay on the Q because the W right now is going to 96th Street. And with all the construction they're doing at Astoria, Queens right now, and during rush hour comes up, it gets very heavy for people, because people want to get on the N or W, switch to the 7 train, or since they can't go switch to LaGuardia Airport right now because Astoria Boulevard is closed, there is going to be now soon, when they open that up, that's going to be another major accessible connection for people to go another way into Manhattan, B to the airport, or C go somewhere faster to Flushing, because that will be another option for them as well. There is a switch, if you look right there on 57th Street, that can actually get some of the edges off. Right in front of, if say you were going towards Uptown position or the back of downtown, you have a switch there that they claim, they can't fix. Then why is it there? Or why can't you just fix it and let the N go right in there? And it does give an option for the train. Say something goes wrong, at least it gives the N an option to go program to 96th Street if there is a problem. Because we do have like four to five N trains that go to 96th Street, but they act like Q trains one way and an N train the other way.
All right, so that's a lot of different questions at once. I'm trying to break them up into various pieces.
Do it the best you can.
So on the F line, the greatest source of runtime variability on the F line is a merge with the E at 36th Street Queens. It's actually the highest frequency single merge in the system. You have 30 trains per hour coming across 20-mile-per-hour switches onto the express tracks of the Queens Boulevard line. One of the things we're looking at in the Queens proposals is eliminating that merge. So using the N to displace the E off of the express tracks and eliminating that merge entirely. Again, this is all preliminary, so this all needs to be reviewed, thought about more. But we're very sensitive to the issues of the F line, and there are a lot of things that could be done on a route level and also from an operations level to make that line's reliability issues less. I think, again, I want to go back to this issue of seeing the entire system and not just one line. I think with the near-term proposal, yes, the 63rd Street merge is an issue, but we have to also see the benefits. We need to understand that, yes, we're adding a merge to the F, but we're reducing a lot of merges on the Broadway line, which will make service there a lot better. So, yeah, you have to take a little bit of a loss there, but you're getting a massive net gain for Astoria riders and for Second Avenue subway riders and for all the riders who transfer on and off the Broadway corridor as a part of their commutes. Now, you also asked about this switch here, correct? Yes. The reason they don't use that today is it is a faster switch than the one at 34th Street. It's 7 miles per hour faster as its signed speed. 34th Street is 13 miles per hour. As I mentioned, this one is 20 miles per hour. The issues here is that if you had, and I believe this is the thing you're asking about, is having the ends merge onto the local track to go to Astoria here, correct? The issue here is A, you still have that merge and all the unreliability that comes with it, and B, as trains exit 57th Street Station, they enter I believe a 20-mile-per-hour section of grade time signals, which means that they're sort of traveling slowly and variably through the curve under 59th Street as they head towards Astoria. So the benefits of using that switch might not be as great as we'd think they are, and it doesn't really solve the basic issue of having this interaction between the local and express tracks on the corridor. You're not gaining the capacity, you're not really gaining the reliability either. So we believe that the real solution here is to, again, send the N trains up the express tracks, either over 63rd Street to Queens or up 2nd Avenue.
Just a concern because 59th Street and Lex, since that is a switch for people to come from the Bronx.
Yeah.
And I know Mouse was not here, but there has been a lot of people getting off at 59th Street. They just want to get on the N, since now there are 3 trains on that track to the N, R, and W. A lot of people like to go just to get on a train or pray to God. If that train is full, that there's an issue, at least they can go 3 blocks to Lex and 63rd and get on the F train there. But doing the second proposal, there is a concern, as Andrew is correct. If we take away 1 train out of Queens Boulevard, what's going to replace that? We're going to have then the G train going to be running?
We have ways of replacing it without adding the G back.
Wouldn't lose anything on Queens Boulevard. You just substitute, for instance, the E becomes the local and the N becomes the express, or something like that. Or there's still even another thing to all of this, which is maybe less off-putting to folks, which is just keep the N on the express track and keep the trains on their normal routes. You will still have a benefit of some sort. It won't be as large, but people will still have the routes they know, but the N will no longer stop at 49th Street. And, you know, when the R and the W are running, there really is no reason to have a train switch over to 40.
I agree with you at 34th Street. That's why I'm mentioning 57th Street, because you have a switch in the front, both ends of each platform. It will, you know, with the timing, if the W and the N and the R, that's an issue. But there is a stronger issue at 59th Street. If the A, the C trains or the D, they always, if the A acts up, it's like he's right, a chain reaction does come all the way down to our end of Brooklyn, right over the Manhattan Bridge.
These are just things for folks to think about.
No. I'm agreeing with what he's saying. Andrew, please understand. I agree with him about that. He's right about the after effects. What I call is after effects, because if something goes wrong at 59th Street, it affects not just the B, but affects the D, and everyone on the 4th Avenue, I have mentioned this, have
Chris,
issues.
Just in the interest of time, I want to take Edith's question, yeah.
Said the magic word. People take their regular train, this route they know. So many people in New York City know a route. They do not have what we call analytic and transferable skills. The problem is when you start screwing around with who's going to be an express, who's going to be whatever. Sensory people who learn, literally go out and learn with a trainer their thing. People who are deaf do not get any of those reinforcements. People with cognitive issues, the same. It's really important, if we're going to do anything like this, that we have a major, big time, capital letters, travel training program teaching people where they're going now. And I'm not trying to be facetious. You know, it's easy for me. I can read the sign, I can hear the announcement if they make the announcement. But a lot of people don't have that skill. And I think that's really important for people who like ask, why the hell do we always have, you know, a D crossing in front of us before we get to 125th Street? Well, I'm sure the D's are hearing there's an A crossing.
Edith, I'm going to let Bradley answer, but just so you know, there have been many similar types of programs which say if your trip formerly between these 2 points was such and such train and such train, your new journey will now be such and such. That software exists, just so you know that.
And how does one encounter that? Where does one encounter that?
Any number of ways.
I have never seen anything that said that. Never.
And I hope that with the emphasis on accessibility, you're absolutely right. The travel training is a critical part of it, and there have been excellent travel training programs, and it's high time.
Not in New York City.
Right, right, and it's high time the MTA get a serious one with the talented individuals that could be a part of it.
And I just wanted to add to that we have, from the last report, we have had conversations with transit that is definitely needed, that if any of this were to happen, it is a robust change and people do get used to their lines, that there would have to be information, not just, on the platforms and announcements and everything else, but there would have to be a very robust travel training program to address these changes because they are
The
substantial.
only travel training we have in New York City is for people who are in accessoroid. There is no other travel training except the little bit they get in school.
We need to wrap up
Deborah
our
Holmore
meeting.
has a.
Deborah, did you want to say something?
That's okay. But in terms of your August trip, I had a couple of thoughts. How about the Consolidated Revenue Facility, which Al Pretre always touts? Yeah. The problem is it's in Ridgewood, Queens. It's not accessible by subway. You'd have to take a pretty long bus ride. And then the second one is the print shop, That's in Ridgewood, Brooklyn, and I'm told that that's a pretty
Can
good.
we make money?
And the Transit Museum actually has a trip they go to for the kids with disability.
Yeah.
Deborah,
yeah.
could you send Lisa those two
Sure,
suggestions
sure.
and their
the
locations?
Third, I don't think this might work. I mentioned it earlier, the track geometry train. I don't think it can accommodate all of you. But that's a fascinating trip, Yeah. Yeah. But those two things, so I'll check with Lisa on that.
Thanks, Deborah.
Thank you.
Yeah, this is to wrap this up. But I wanted to say Uday has actually been our intern for several years, that he is now going off to Harvard, but he has been instrumental in helping us come to understand much more about tracks and signals and how the system operates and how much we're going to miss him. So thank you, Uday.
Thank you for having me.
You don't have a quorum, so we'll just adjourn.
Okay. Can we adjourn right now? I'm used to it.